Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We meet every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Uh, this is our September 13th show. Of course, you know that. You've read that. I wanted to encourage you as you are clearly watching this. I don't know if you're doing this on YouTube or whether you're doing it from the website. But if you're on YouTube, the website is thebibleforum.net. There are other websites there that you can peruse. We have a new one starting. It's called Bible Institute of Charleston.org. And I talked to the web guy just this week. In fact, I think it was Saturday. What's today? Sunday. Yesterday. And he wasn't worth a dime. He was giddy. He was laughing. He was just as happy as he could be. Had just coming back from a meeting with his wife's doctor. They're going to have a baby. And I said, a baby? What's that mean about my website? Does that mean I don't get one any day soon? It's all about me. But it's great. These young people. And you could just hear it in his voice. He was tickled to death. So you pray for Matt and for his wife. She has to put up with him. And that he gets my website done. Tomorrow I'm going to... with this stuff still set up, I'm going to do an introduction to the Bible Institute so that when the website is done, we can put that video up there. I'll probably put it on the Bible Forum's website as well. And for some of you, I've gotten emails and phone calls from people saying, you know, what's it all about? I'll let you know. I'll let you know. It's going to be online. You're going to be able to get the video and do it at your own leisure. You're not going to have to show up on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock and sit in front of the computer for an hour. There is a cost. Right now it's $100 per course. Some of the courses will be 4 or 5 lessons. Some will be 8 or 9. Same price. There'll be 10 of them initially. We're going to work through the basic doctrines of the Bible. Working on bibliology as we speak. I have done some work in this area, taught this a time or two, but thinking about a Bible Institute, it gets bigger. And every time I'm working on it, I think, oh, what about this? We throw that in there. Oh, look at that. The last time I left it, I got up from the computer and went to get something to eat, and I ran back and I typed in teledoths. Some of you know what that is. But I'd forgotten that. That goes in there. It goes right there. We're going to talk about teledoths. There's all kinds of stuff. Want you to be a part of it. Want you to get the email I send out every week. Send me your email address. Just send it to the BibleForum@gmail.com. It's on the website. You can find it. And I want you to stay up on all of this. I have an issue, and some of you have been with me for years. I mean, we've been doing this. How long we've been doing this together? This is 25th. It's 16 years. We've been together for 16 years. Some of you were with me in the beginning on the radio in Wilmington. We did, 14 or 15 years on the radio, 2 different stations, and now just online. In part because I am semi-retired and I'm not in Wilmington and I can't do the radio show from here. But also in part because this is where we're going. We're getting away from radio. We're getting away from TV. Everything's going to happen on the internet. The cable companies are going crazy. They can't make any money. You know, they're trying to encourage you to stay with them by offering their stuff through the internet. If you have an account with Time Warner or with one of these other organizations, there's just all sorts of things that they're doing to try to hold you in, but they have no hold. I don't have time to sit down every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock and watch this program. Well, if it's Wheel of Fortune, I do. My wife does. I love it. I love her. But I mean, you know, that's how it goes. But I can come back and I can watch it whenever I want. And that's what we're doing. We put these up on the website, and the website plays them whenever you show up. It'll start playing, and it'll work down through them. And when you're done the 4 or 5 for this week, You can click where it says Ustream Live across the bottom, and it'll take you to the Ustream page we have, and there's a whole year's worth of this stuff. I'm thinking that in the future, I have a date in October. I have to be away on a Sunday night. And so I will pre-record the show on Saturday and set it up to run at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. And I'm anxious to see how that works, because that may just be the thing of the future. That I could do this Tuesday, or Friday. I could do one of these every time I feel like it, and then just set it up, and you can come and go as you please. It's not as pleasing, because this is live. And you haven't heard me give out the phone number because I'm not sure that stuff is working. It was, but folks do email me, and they do call during the week, and I love to hear from people. I had one fellow who said that the sound wasn't quite right, and I'm assuming that we've got that under control. Another fellow said that the video wasn't coming through, especially because he had a low, didn't have a high-speed internet connection. I just realized that that has been running at the high-speed level the entire evening. I am sorry. I just dropped it down. It degrades here in the live, but it doesn't degrade in the recording. These are personal failures. Anyway, let me tell you about Christianity at the End of the Age. It's a blog that I wrote a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you've already read it. I don't know. But John MacArthur has pastored for a lot of years. I met John in 1977, and he had already been about 7 or 8 years at Grace Community Church in California. He's been there for close to 50 years, and he shows no signs of quitting. But in this time, he has tackled a number of issues, one of which has been the charismatic movement. And he's gone after it pretty strenuously under a number of different headings and in different manners. Most recently, he did a whole conference based on it with a book to follow and all the rest of it. And in interviews, people ask him, and he says, I don't see myself as a vigilante, somebody who is determined to go after this problem or that problem. I'm just working my way through the scriptures, and these things come up, and when they push hard at the church and at people, I have an obligation to speak about it. So he does. Well, it's not surprising that as he writes about these things or as he speaks on these issues, that people don't like it. And they try to embarrass him. He's been on TV, a number of shows, and they bring this stuff up, and the goal is to trip him up or to show that he doesn't know what he's talking about. That doesn't work. They want to denounce him if they can at all possible. Well, one of those events occurred on August 16th of this year, 2015. A man made his way onto the platform at Grace Community Church on a Sunday morning while John was preaching. He got up to preach, and this fellow got up on the stage. I saw a picture of him standing up on the stage about 20 feet away from the lectern in front of the band, the orchestra, I should say. And he was basically pointing his finger at John and rebuking him in the name of the Lord. Who gives somebody that right? I mean, not a member of the church, doesn't attend there, just showed up specifically to do this. This is a senior member of the Church of Christ, a respected father, if you will. Write him a letter. Call him on the phone. Do it privately. Nope, decided he was going to come up on the stage and he was going to point his finger and tell him that God said that he's wrong. Well, John stood there and listened, didn't respond to it. The security team helped the man find his way out of the church. Nobody got hurt. and John went back to preaching. What was really happening? What was happening was the man identified himself as a prophet of God. He believed that God had told him to go to this church, stand on his pulpit, and abuse this man publicly, embarrass him or whatever, to be God's voice of rebuke in John MacArthur's life. Where in the Bible do you find stuff like that? Where in the Bible is anybody a self-appointed prophet of God? It's not there. You say, well, he did not appoint himself. God appointed himself. How did God do that? God gave him that gift. He's a prophet. God ordained him as a prophet of God. He did. Do you understand what a prophet of God is? We have the Old Testament as an illustration. Yeah, but this is New Testament prophetic word. Well, if it's a prophet of God, it's a prophet of God. Do you know why the temple was destroyed in 70 AD and not 170 AD? Not because of blood moons. Because it had been prophesied by Jesus that it would happen. And if it did not happen, Jesus, as a prophet, or claiming to be a prophet, would have been taken out and stoned. The Old Testament prophets spoke of what God was doing. And some of that had ramifications for the future, but some had ramifications for the present. And during that prophet's lifetime, those things either happened or didn't. And if it didn't, he was a false prophet. And he was to be stoned like a witch. It was the same idea. In addition to all of that, whatever the prophet says is really the word of God. So now we have self-styled prophets. They're only in the charismatic movement. We don't have them anywhere else. But within that movement, we have these people, men and women alike, who stand up and say, God spoke to me, and God said thus and so. And I have said for years, if this is true, why don't I have that in my hand? The God that I love, the God that has chosen me to be his own, has given me the scriptures. All that I need for life and for godliness. And he has sealed it end to end. Boom. Done. These guys come along and they add to it. I should have pages in the back of my Bible with shoving this stuff in, shouldn't I? If it's a word from God, I'm not supposed to know it? How does that help the church? And trust me, there are people all over the world in little places you never heard of that are doing this. Why are they doing this? Well, largely because of TBN. Otherwise, they would have never heard of it. Yeah, well, they would have come to it on their own. No, they wouldn't. You have to do gymnastics to get to this place. The Apostle Paul lists for us prophets second only to apostles in the New Testament. And right behind that are teachers. When he gives his list of leaders in the church, when he gives his list of spiritual gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, they're listed that way as well. But he specifies that the spirit of a prophet is subject to the prophet in chapter 14. It isn't like the prophet has no control over what he says. He does. They don't have to say everything they think. They don't have to say everything they know. In Paul's letter to the Ephesians, he says the church is built on the foundation of apostles and prophets. He was writing in the mid-60s AD. Later, Peter, writing closer to 70 AD, warns of false teachers. But he doesn't warn of false prophets. Later, John comes along, writing in about 90 AD, and he's warning about false prophets. He says they're among you, they're roaming around. 1 John chapter 4. And so what happens is that historians, scholars, they look at this and see a progression. Yeah, in the beginning, boom. In the middle, still. At the end, not so much. Things are changing. The church is developing. Do we need all the gifts? Do we need the apostles and the prophets? We know the apostles went away. It was only 12 of them. We're left with the reality that the apostles and prophets were the foundation stones of the church. And once the church was established, we don't need the foundation stone anymore. And the canon of Scripture was closed somewhere in the mid-90s AD, before 100 AD, certainly. And by saying the canon is closed, there's no new revelation. Without new revelation, there's no need for a prophet. So we have some obvious problems. If we have New Testament prophets today, then the canon is open. It isn't closed. God is still revealing stuff. He's revealing a word by which his people are taught or enlightened or protected or comforted. A word these contemporary prophets are not sharing with the whole church. Does that mean that what they're doing is bad, wrong, evil? It doesn't have to be. It may be that they have observed something. They're very sensitive spiritually to the things that are going on, and they have observed things in people or in churches or whatever that really stands out in their mind and in their heart is wrong. And they have every right to say that's not right. Who do you know does that? I do that. And in that sense, I'm exercising that prophetic ministry. I'm not a prophet. God isn't speaking to me, through me, to you. It doesn't work that way. Now, these are all issues that the church has wrestled with, but only in the last 100 years or so. Prior to that, everybody knew this stuff was crazy, and it was a very small group that was just, but now it has become mainstream. A rudimentary understanding of English grammar is sufficient to undermine the doctrine that has become so popular relative to spiritual gifts and to, specifically to prophets and tongues and all the rest of it. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, charismatics run there to see, here's that list. These are the things God has given. And God has given this and this and this and this and this. And of course, in there is tongues and the interpretation of tongues and prophets and, healings and all the rest. But if you just read it, it's not saying that at all. What Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 is, number one, there are diversities of gifts. Just a clear statement, a fact, a lot of different stuff. Right behind that, he says there are differences in administration. Of what? of the gifts. Just told you, there are diversities of gifts. There's a lot of different kinds. And there are differences in the way those gifts are administered. And then thirdly, in the same sentence, he says, and there are diversities of operations of these gifts as they are being administered. And after that comes a but. He's not talking anymore about the gifts, the administrations, the manifestations. Now, but we're talking about the manifestations of the Spirit. Can you see that? I mean, a fourth grade English grammar student can be shown this and it will make sense to them. Because that's what it is. It's English grammar. There are a lot of different gifts, and there are a lot of different ways those gifts are administered. And there's a lot of ways that they operate in harmony with the various ways they're administered and so forth. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to everybody, that the whole might profit. How? Well, in some cases, it might be a word of wisdom. That would be important, wouldn't it? Wisdom is not just pure knowledge, but discernment, the common sense of a thing. And it may be that the Spirit would manifest himself in your life, that you would understand something that nobody else understands at that moment. In other cases, it might be a word of knowledge, something that nobody knew. They didn't have a full understanding of it, but for some reason you do, and you don't know why you do. It might be stronger or a more specific kind of faith for a particular situation. It might be the ability to heal someone or perform some miracle or to speak some prophetic word or to speak in a language you don't really know, or to understand something in a language you don't really know. Just like on the day of Pentecost. It might be any of those things. But they are all listed as manifestations of the Spirit, not as spiritual gifts. I don't have one that I call my own that I can operate whenever I want. These are things that come and go. The apostles were able to preach on the day of Pentecost in languages they didn't know. But they weren't able to do that forever. They did it on that day. I don't really have a record of them ever doing it again. Written language is not open to personal interpretation without error. If I use a private interpretation of that particular sentence, I risk error. That sentence is governed by the rules of grammar. The words in that form with that grammatical structure, defined as they are, mean only what they meant to the one who wrote it. The author is protecting his work through grammar and through vocabulary, meaning that I can't just take it and twist it and make it into what I want. Of course I can, but I would be wrong. But that's precisely what we're watching today. Man jumps up on a platform, I have the gift of prophecy, and I'm here to tell you that God says you're wrong. Well, thank you very much. But John MacArthur's right on this issue, and you're wrong. And the vast majority of Christians who have ever lived agree with me. The Bible agrees with me when it's interpreted the way it was written and not the way you want it to be. You don't get to stand before a senior saint, a well-respected man of the cloth, as it were, and just berate him in front of his congregation because God told you so. It doesn't work like that. You know, Benny Hinn wouldn't do it. Benny Hinn wouldn't do that. Kenneth Copeland wouldn't do that. Pat Robertson wouldn't do it. Why? Out of respect. They might do it privately. They write about it. They'll preach about it. They'll talk about it, like me. Out of a sense that people are free to believe and to preach whatever they choose. And they do. If God did not strike Oral Roberts dead for his seed faith teaching, I doubt any of these people are at risk. This seed faith teaching has made millionaires, billionaires out of these people at the expense of the sick and the maimed and the poor and the destitute. The teaching is a pure travesty of God, a travesty against the Word of God. It doesn't mean what they say it means. They have created a doctrine where there isn't one. And it works. Unconscionable men and women are currently fleecing the flock with a teaching that isn't even there. Where's the prophet of God to condemn them? Or Roberts said that he had the power of healing in his right hand, not in his left hand, only in his right hand. And how many of these other people have healing? They have meetings, come and they're healed. All these people are healed. They brag about how many people they've healed. And all of these faith healers, as they've gotten older, have died. Died. Several notable men have died of heart attacks. A published report indicated Oral Roberts was at 5 days in a hospital in California with a heart attack before he died. Not one of his buddies with the gift of healing bothered to come and just simply lay hands on him. Not one. Would they, if they could? They would. I've said for years, if there is one person who is ever healed, legitimately healed by the touch of another human being or by the power of God through that human being, the whole world would know it. The world would stop. The microphones and the cameras would be at that guy's house. He wouldn't be able to move. And one day it will. But the healing will not be from the power of God. It'll be demonic.